Hello and welcome to Mini Up Your Fantasy Sports Community. I'm your host, Blake, coach of Youngies Yaks, and I'm joined by Clinton.
Coach of Dash's Dogs, and I'm going well, thank you, Blake. Another reasonable score from the Dogs. So, round two away, and looking forward to the real trade season coming up. So, we're talking Supercoach today. It's all happening.
Have you heard who's back, Clinton?
Yaks is back.
The Yaks are back. It's been a big week of Supercoach, and I'm up and about for our round round two. The Yaks are back. So, we're talking Supercoach. I've moved up 51,000 spots, Clinton. So I scored 2,472. So I've moved up the rankings 51,000 spots to 25K. Haven't quite caught you yet, but it was a very big week for the Yaks. How'd you score?
Just middling. I scored, a bit better than middling, but 23-27, which takes me to a rank of 12,199. But I'm happy. Got a lot of my team's well set up, and now I'm ready to strike.
Is that slightly down in the rankings?
Yeah, I went down about 4K, I think. But as I said, I've got a lot of money in the bank. Now, I'm not getting interest on that, but I'm well set up to really I've got wide options. I can really go premium quickly, or I can really get those couple other mid prices, but at least I have these options, so I'm excited.
That's good. What trades did you make after round one there, Clint?
So I ended up, due to the fact that Dylan Stevens scoring the 95 as my emergency, I was able to shuffle around my team, and I didn't have Martin in the end of last week. So despite him not playing this week, I brought him in, which then allowed me to move Elijah Hollins to the midfield, so then I can take Stevens' score. So I ended up trading out Jared Berry, which I mentioned last week was a strong possibility. He ended up scoring, what did he score, 70-something?
Yeah, it wasn't that great.
Something like that. So he was on a low score still. I think it was midway through the third quarter. I was quite happy, but he saved it somewhat late in the game. But it'll be interesting to see how Jared Berry goes the next month. But right now, I'm not complaining. I've got Martin in, who will definitely come back into Essendon's team and will obviously make a lot of money soon. So I'm glad I made that trade. One down, and I'm really and ahhing this week. Obviously, a lot of time to wait to see the teams and if there's any more COVID issues. But right now, I'm potentially doing the trade boost, but we'll just wait and see.
Trade boost. He's won the 5 already.
Potentially.
Berry scored 76, so it wasn't too bad, but you'd still be happy if you didn't have him. After my dismal start to the season in round one, I didn't end up making a trade. I backed my team in, and it paid off for me. So we'll go into our hits and misses now, Clinton, of our three.
Quickly, Blake. So you were going to bring in Rail. You were desperate to bring in Rail.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure the old Dash's Dogs gave you advice just to hold off another week. I think that paid dividends, because now all of a sudden Rail tagged a bit. So we'll see how that unfolds this week. But just the 71 from Rail. So if you could have really destroyed your team with 2 trades to get in Rail to score 71. So wise non-trading there, Blake. Well done.
Yeah, in the end, I didn't have a trade option for him. With Ward, I got to see the Hawthorn team beforehand on the Saturday. So Ward was picked, so I was happy to see how he went for one more week, and he played quite well, so I was happy to hold on to him. And in the end, I didn't have the trades to get up to Rail. I wasn't going to trade out the likes of Horn, Francis, Dacos, or Steffens. So, in the end, I didn't have the trades and didn't have the downgrade options as well. I would have gone Nick Martin if he was playing for Baldwin, but there wasn't the trades there. I was happy with the majority of my team, but thanks for your advice there, Clinton.
Oh, pleasure.
So the hits and misses, my most successful one, most obviously, was captaining Lachie Neale. We discussed it last week in our show of who we were going to captain, and Neil was my second option after vice captaining Dunkley. So we saw his previous scores against Essendon and knew he'd performed quite well in the past. So I was happy to lock him in, and it paid off very well. He scored 198. My next best hit was having Bowie for Melbourne. He scored 151, Clinton, at 265K as a defender. He was almost on the chopping block after round one, to be honest. At that awkward price, I could have very easily gone Bowie to Hewitt, but I wanted to hold on to my trades for one more week and see what happens. So that paid off for me. And the other one is Patrick Crisp scored 162.
Who was that? Sorry?
Patrick Cripps.
Oh, yes. So
you know
Cripps? It sounded like you said crispy again.
Well, he got an honourable mention as well. Cripps and Crisp, they performed quite well for me.
Yes, well done.
Your three hits, Clinton?
3 hits. I've got a lot of names, as you pointed out last week, I've got a lot of names which are very well owned anyway, but shout out to Zach Butters, 136. I'm happy with him. Tristan Cherry, also someone who's very popular, but he scored 120. Happy he's in my team. And the other one also is Will Brodie. A lot of people were and ahhing with him, but he's, despite low time on ground, he's still pumping out 101. So happy to have him. Obviously, the premiums I don't need to mention, but I can't go without saying Touk Miller 140, Jack McRae 142. So a lot of strong scores across the premiums.
Yeah. Do you want to discuss your misses now, Clint?
The misses. Okay. Well, started early. Mitch McGovern. I think we had a lot of messages being exchanged that night, but I was really annoyed at myself because I could have had him as an emergency on my bench, but I decided to just play him because I thought he'd score well. So when he scored 40, I was very frustrated, but in the end, it cost me 18 points because Rochelle only scored 58. So Mitch McGovern, I was a bit disappointed by. Next one will be Matt Rao, 71. Very strange role change mid-game, which restricted his, I don't know, his confidence or just his ball-winning ability because in round one, he was amazing. So, obviously disappointing 71, but I'm expecting a big turnaround this week. The third one would, once again, what's a toss of a coin here, but I'd have to go Whitfield again. Whitfield, he's just not quite the player is at the moment. So I'm hoping there's a lot of discussion about trading him out. I'm going to keep him, so I'm backing him in for one more week, I think.
Well, your misses were very similar to mine, Clinton. I also had McGovern and Whitfield. As we've already mentioned, I didn't have Rao. So my other miss that I had was Chapman for Fremantle. He didn't back up his 80 from his round one score. He was one of my highlights from round one, and then he was my second lowest scorer for round two. So Chapman was my other miss on top of McGovern and Whitfield. Yeah, we'll get into it a bit later, but Whitfield's a really interesting one. He's all around the ball, but it's just, even his decision-making was off at the moment. He wasn't using it as well as he usually does. And it's quite bizarre. He looks to be playing a similar role to what he was last season. So I can't really see why he's dropped off so dramatically, but potentially might be carrying an injury or something like that. But we'll discuss that a bit later when we talk about the other players. Who did you captain for round two, Clinton?
So I had the VC on Jack McRae, which a lot of people did. And when he scored 142, I was very happy to take his score. So didn't think twice about it, took his captaincy score. Obviously Lachie Neale went berserk, and at one stage I thought, Miller was going to go past that score as well. But I think there's a question later about the VC captaincy loop and what's an acceptable score. But very happy with the 142 from McRae.
Yeah. Who was going to be your second option?
Toot Miller was going to, yeah.
So. The funny thing was on the first night, people are bragging about having Cripps as captain, 162 in our Patreon chat. They were very happy with it, 162, and then Lockie Neal just comes out and goes bang.
Yeah, well, these are the exciting parts of Supercoach, and when you hit a captaincy score like that, you got every right to brag about it. But then, it's one of those ones. It's about catching the right captaincy score, and obviously Lockie Neal, you chose wisely, like.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very fortunate in the end there. We'll just talk through some players, Clinton. There's a lot of interesting scores from the first two rounds, some players underperforming and overperforming what was expected. One of the questions from our Patreon chats, Clinton, was what to do with Max Gawn. It's a hot topic that's been all over Twitter, and it was asked by Az in our Patreon, Clinton. What do you own Max Gawn, don't you?
Yes. Now, it's a whole set and forget argument, and everyone who started Max Gawn will be wanting to keep him. But everyone gets excited about the trades and the ability to what opportunities you get from bringing in someone else for Max Gawn. But personally, watching the first, I didn't see a lot of the actual game versus the Gold Coast, but what I will say is, he looked a bit rusty round one, and it was competitive game versus the Bulldogs. Everyone has a bit of a down game. At the Gold Coast, those type of conditions, and with Jackson taking a bit more ruck time, a bit concerning, but for me, he'll bounce back. I've got a lot of confidence that this week he'll sort of somewhat know that he's not at his best, and I can see a large score coming up this week from Max Gawn. So if people want to trade him out, that's their choice, and good luck. For me personally, I will definitely be keeping him, and I'm expecting here. I'll say it now. I'm expecting 140 plus versus the Bombers this week. So everyone's got their own choice. Good luck to you if you do trade him out, but I'll be keeping him for sure.
Just some numbers on Max Gawn for you, Clinton. He's got a break even of 204.
Yep.
If he scores 105, he'll drop by 45K.
Yep.
And last season against Essendon, he only scored 103 against them.
Yep. Well, that's okay. Well, when he scores 140 plus, everyone will be thinking, why did I get rid of him? So, it's one of those decisions which could be detrimental either way. Like he literally could score 180, or if he does score another 79 or whatever, 80 or 9 or whatever he's been scoring. If you do trade him, that would have been the wise decision. But I still think I'm keeping him.
He's been traded out by 9,000 coaches at the moment, Clinton, and we're only at Monday. So that might be a few rage trades there. So we'll go one up, one down. The other one from our chat was, is Hewitt a legit scoring option? So as a non-Hewitt owner in Supercoach,
you can answer that, Blake.
I still don't trust that he'll be playing 100% midfield minutes. But
who does?
In saying that, I still might be bringing him in this week myself after he still put in a strong performance even with Walsh in the team. But I think Walsh potentially might push out to the wing. He still looked a little bit injured, in my opinion, Walsh. So they might try and look after Walsh a bit and put him out to the wing, which would keep Hewitt in that on-ball role. Is playing more forward than defender, if anything. So
Chera to come back in too.
Yeah, that's the other one. Chera to come back in, which will push Walsh out to the wing, in my opinion. But Hewitt's he's had a few shots on goal in the first two rounds, so he's been a scoring option as well. So is Hewitt a legit option? I would have to say yes, even though I've been a non-owner in the first two rounds, which is a complete backflip on my on last week. But he backed it up in round two.
The question is how the team looks when everyone's fit. And right now, I could say Cheryl's out, Walsh was coming back from injury, and apparently was sore, obviously sore post game. And I think there's every chance that Hewitt remains in the midfield for me. So I'm very glad that I started him, and I can still see him getting scores of 100 plus for a while at the moment. So contested ball, he did handball a lot, but I think he's in and under. And as I said, I think Voss would love players like that in his midfield.
Yeah, so George Hewitt, break even of -15. So even if he scores 90 this week, he's going to go up by 50K. So even if he does start to underperform in 2 or 3 weeks' time, you would have already made your money's worth on him, in my opinion. So that's why.
Ideally, you'd be keeping him for the season if you're bringing him in now. So that's the debate, really, because you're paying 400 for him still now, and then using a trade for that, you'd be wanting to keep him all year. So it's just whether or not you see him remaining a top 6 to 8 defensive option.
Unless you have the cash like you do to go up from a rookie who you wouldn't be holding for the whole year.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
The next one, we've covered it slightly, but we'll go into it again. What is wrong with Lachie Whitfield is a question I had through the socials, Clinton.
Well, once again, I can't comment too much because I didn't see the whole game. I saw the second half, I think, and from what I saw, he's still running around well. I can't explain what happened in terms of the Giants, but it's one of those things that they had an off day. When they do get on top of teams, he can get points for fun. 2 losses is obviously a contributing factor. So if the Giants start getting some momentum, I expect Lachie Whitfield to score. So similar to Max Gawn, I'm keeping him. And I'm at this stage still confident that he'll turn it around. And I don't see. The money game is, you can really get aggressive with it, but then potentially in a month's time, you've burnt several trades and your team's looking potentially slightly worse. So, he's one I'm keeping. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the likes of Jack Crisp is a prime example of a reason why you don't trade out your premiums. A lot of coaches were trading out Crisp and Steele after round 1. Now they've both scored over 110. So I'm in the same boat. I've got Whitfield and I'll be holding him. I did watch the game and he was still running around. He looked a bit exhausted by the end of it. That's because he just does so many kilometers. He was still getting in the right positions. I think GWS just needed to give him the ball more, to be honest. He was at times in the middle of the ground ready to receive the ball, but they were just looking sideways and not looking inboard. I think that'll change after a couple of losses at GWS. Did you have any other questions of players that you like to discuss or team structure there, Clinton?
Well, I think the first part to it is, we touched on it last week, but it's about making sure you have all the rookies or the money generators. And that's one of the reasons why I brought in Martin, not only it just worked in well that Dylan Stevens scored 95, but then I just think the likes of, you can go rattle through about 10 names, but there's almost like 10 must-haves. So if you look through the list here, Sherry, Hayes, Rochelle, Martin, probably Stevens in the midfield, Dacos, Horn Francis, Will Brodie, and then in the back line you've got the likes of McCartan, Hinge, and that's all just the cheaper players. And then you've got the mid-prices who are whether or not it's Rao, the likes of Hewitt. So that's when, if you put a poor score out like McGovern did, all of a sudden you start thinking, do I need to keep him and trade him out to someone else as well? So, I think that's everyone's priority. Number one, I think, is to make sure you have those money generators. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing is which potential premiums that you're eyeing off who are scoring well and you can see continuing to score well. So just to rattle off some scores for you, Brayshaw scored 189 points. Cripps, I'm not going to mention names, so I don't have in my team. Brayshaw, 189. Cripps, 162. Petrarca still scored 129, but he's still a player that I'm eyeing off. Isaac Heaney, 140. Aaron Hall, 123. Jaden Short, I don't have, 136. So there's a lot of names there that if you're going to upgrade, there's plenty of options. So, yep, it's a juggling act. Everyone's in their own. Depends who you have. But first priority for me is the money generators, the cash cows, and then working out which premiums you need to jump on.
If you were to say 5 players under the price of 200K that are must-haves, Clinton, which
only?
You only get 5. Which ones would be the highest 5?
I still think Dacos would probably be number 1.
Yep.
Jerry doesn't count. He's over 200. Jack Hayes, massive break even. I think he should still remain in the team for a while, I think. I think Nick Martin. And
could you wait off one more week on Martin?
Yes, you could. Good input there, Blake. Rochelle as well. So, there's 5 for you.
Yeah, you pretty much named the best break evens there. If Hayes does get picked this week, I pretty much have to. I don't have Hayes, and if he does get picked this week, I do have to bring him in because if he scores 100, he's going to go up by 105K.
Yep.
And that's just cash generation that I can't miss out on. So that would most likely be a trade. I'll go into my trades a bit later, but that'll be most likely a trade boost for me depending on if he's picked. I still think it's risky that he'll get dropped in the near future. He didn't score that highly over the weekend, and I believe Ryder played in the VFL over the weekend. So there's a possibility he might not even get a game this week. So, and if he doesn't, that would put me in a good position because he's in 71% of teams. So,
yeah, I think you have to be mindful of when he does play the next game, whenever that. I expect it to be this week. But as you said, if he does still go well, scores 100, as you said, he goes up 100 and whatever K. And then if you then to play the next game, he'd be going up probably another 80K. So I agree with that. I think it's a must-have. It's just, obviously depending on selection.
The other one of those that I don't currently have, Clinton, who I traded out of my round 1 team to get Cherry in, was Rochelle. So he's got a break even of negative 68. And if he scores 90, he's going to go up 70K as well. So these are the kinds of players that are going to go up in a lot of value. And if you don't have them, you're going to miss out on a lot of cash generation. So these are the things you got to consider as well as trying to get those premiums in, like you mentioned.
And then I guess the next debate is the likes of, for me, I've got the likes of Gibcus. Then I'll look at McGovern. So there's those guys who, potentially, are best 22 players, going to score reasonably, maybe a bit up and down. But the question is, do you need to keep those types of guys, or do you need to actually trade them out for bigger cash cows? So that's where the whole trading game is pretty interesting, and all depends who you have in your team. But right now I feel like I'm in a good position, but I know it could go wrong very quickly. So that's the exciting part of it all. Don't let. That's one of those things you were up and about the start of this episode. If our trades are wrong this week, we could be 2 very flat boys next week. So that's the best part about Supercoach, isn't it, Blake?
It sure is. After round 1, our brother sent me a message and asked me if I was going to restart my entire team. And now after round 2, I'm ahead of him by about 50 points.
There you go.
It's. I am up and about at the moment, but it's it's going to be very I'm very excited for this week and as to what's going to happen. But yeah, one of the names you mentioned there, Clinton, Isaac Heaney. What do you think about him long term as a forward?
Um, I think he's similar to Cripps in my opinion. Someone who the reason why I didn't start him was the potential risk of uh, not so much Cripps, but with Heaney, just his role and his capability to stay fit and consistently score high. He started the season on fire. And yeah, even if he stays up forward, if he's kicking those goals, which he's doing it at will at the moment, he's going to continue to score well. So he looked like he's one of those picks that was obviously risky, but it's paid off for those who started him. Well done. If looking at my team, as I said, there's 5 to 10 guys that I could potentially trade in. My whole season's going to be reliant on this smart decision, and Heaney's definitely one in the mix that I could get in this week. So there's a lot of those options which, if you didn't start them, you could debate is a great pick, and yeah, I want to get him now, but then could quite easily backfire. So, yep, risky. I'm not sure is my answer.
Interesting answer. For me, exactly what you said. He's been playing predominantly forward, but he has been kicking bags of goals. Once he's not kicking bags of goals, he's not going to be kicking 5 goals every week. If once that stops, like, are you going to be happy to accept that he puts out a score of 60 every now and then because he's not kicking the goals? I'm not too sure as one of your premium options. So for me, I'm still happy to not move out of my way to get him into my team. I'm not going to dismantle my team to put him in. He's been traded in by 11,000 managers so far. So I don't know how people are finding this value, whether they're downgrading Gawn or the likes of Whitfield at a similar price. So 11,000 managers teams have put him in, and he's got a break even of -15 at 454k. Another name you mentioned there, Clinton, Aaron Hall. Obviously started the season well, averaging 126. As we mentioned last week, he's a risky option. What are your thoughts on Aaron Hall?
Just chuck him in the pile of those players that, yeah, strong possibility to come into my team this week. It's just how risky I want to be. And the likes of Cripps, the likes of Heaney, the likes of Hall, yeah, I think his scores so far are low for him still. Like, yeah.
I thought he could have scored more. Watching the game, every single time the ball went near North Melbourne's defence or even in the middle of the ground, he happened just to get the ball in his hands.
So what I argued last week was definitely wait a week to see how he gets through his second game. Clearly, still scored well. And as we discussed last week, he could easily continue this run and even get better. And then he'll be out of range for a lot of people because instead of him being whatever he's now, 570, he'll be 600, mid 650s and going higher towards 700. So that's when it becomes too much to pay. So
would you consider a swap from Whitfield to Hall?
Personally, not. Well, that's I've sort of in my mind just said, no, I'm going to keep Whitfield because I don't want to have that regret of getting rid of him. But ideally right now, I'd want Hall in my team rather than Whitfield, but I'm not sure if that's worth a trade. So it's a possibility, but right now I'm not leading that way. I'm playing the long game. But if there's any glimmer of a Whitfield injury or if a COVID situation happens or whatever, then yes, strong possibility of that happening. Keep in mind also, just sorry, I want to add on to that. I'm not forgetting about Luke McDonald still. Luke McDonald's only scored about 88, I think.
He did score 88,
He will go down into the back line after round 6. And I think I'd almost say that's his floor. That's his low score. I think he's going to be relatively consistent. And if he can, at his price right now, which is cheaper than Hewitt, get an average of above 100, I think that's could be a 200K discount on Hall, but he won't score as much. But still think he may be a solid scorer. So he's definitely someone I'm still considering for this week as well.
372K, negative 10 break even. If he scores 90, he's going to go up by 45K there, Clinton, in Mcdonald.
Yes.
Yes. My thing for the midfield is I don't really have a spot for Luke McDonald at the moment. I'm not sure if you do, but I've got 5 premiums and then the 3 strong rookies of Horn, Francis, Dacos, and Stephens. So I don't know. Okay. I don't know if I really have a spot for him there, whether it's worth having Stevens on the bench to get McDonald into field when I need to upgrade other areas, and to go through 4 weeks of having that extra points on the bench. I'm not sure it's worth it for mine. I'm not sure if you've got that extra midfield spot for him there, Clinton.
No, I've got a spot to really launch into. So right now I've spread out my money, and as I said, I've got 450K in the bank. So I've got the likes of McRae, Miller, Neal, and Rao at the moment. And then I've got, as low as then at the moment, I've got Brody, Horn, Francis, and Dacos. So then, so I've got a spot to really launch into. So it's just which avenue I go. Petrarca, I want to mention him now. He's just the player that I arguably want the most as well, though. So I can't have them all. That's the challenge of it all. But he looks unstoppable. You could argue that's his low score of whatever he scored, the 120s. Like he's unstoppable. So there's lots of options. So it's all about how you navigate to improve your team without generating cash, but then trying to get the upgrades at the same time.
Yeah, Petrarca scoring, averaging 146 and scored 129 in round 2. My biggest regret is I was tossing up between Bontempelli and Brayshaw going into round 1. One scored 105 both games, the other's averaging 158. As a non-Real owner, Clinton, I'm only in 40% of managers who don't have him. I didn't see the round 2 game as I was driving to Horsham. What kind of role did he play on the weekend? And why did he score so low?
Well, I had a KO. I had a bit of a split screen action going, so I was trying to watch 2 games at once. But he was his usual self in the first quarter, but then they started paying attention to Oliver, I believe. So I think he started just being a bit more defensive minded. So the way he looked round 1, he looked unstoppable and just like an absolute bull. So that was what they went with for the weekend. So we'll see. It all depends on what license he's got around stoppages, really, because I think they were that worried about Melbourne's midfield and that he played a bit more defensive minded. But in round 1, he really just attacked the ball, the contest, and that's where he got his points. So
I think he scored like 45 points in the first quarter, and I was like, oh no, it's happening again. And then he only scored like 3 points in the second.
Yeah, so I'm happy. Put it this way, I'm a happy owner. I'm happy I got him. If I was in your situation, I'm not sure if I'd be racing out to get him now after the weekend. But
what about
his break?
His break even's only negative 27.
So if he scores 86,
it goes up 50K.
Yeah, I think the smart option would be to watch another week
against GWS, who don't necessarily have an out-and-out gun like Clayton Oliver.
Yeah, no, well, it's your choice, but that's why I said I'm happy with my team. But it's a huge dilemma for the likes of yourself. So, if I was in your shoes, I'd wait another week because, you want to be certain he's going up to that higher level to generate enough money to be worthwhile trading him in now. So personally speaking, I'd watch another week. But yeah, good luck.
Two ruck forwards who are averaging above 111, Clinton, and they're both quite cheap options. Luke Jackson, 389K, and Tim English, 482K. Either of these under consideration for you?
Definitely English, but I don't know how I'm going to get him in. And
slightly more expensive. 100K more expensive.
But yeah, it's just, I think that looms is Steph Martin potentially coming back in. So if that does happen, I'd definitely, that's what I'd be worried about. So that's why it's a no for me. And then also, I've got strong confidence in Max Gawn. So that's why I wouldn't go the Luke Jackson path. But for those who started him, well done. But with the amount of time they're splitting, he did look really good on the weekend, but I've gone down the path of Gawn. I'm happy to stay on it. I wouldn't be bringing Luke Jackson, no.
Have you got any other players to discuss before we go into our early round 3 plans there, Clinton?
No, I think that's enough. I think just obviously I'm basing it off my team. So there's lots of players that are going up in price, but just similar to what we said about English, there's lots of ifs about a few players. So Will Brodie scored another 101, but time on ground and how their team will look in a few weeks will be interesting. McGovern, I can see it in him that he'll score 120 in a game soon. So there's a part of me that thinks I'm happy to have him, but then also I think what options I could bring him. Right now, there's not a huge amount of players I want to trade out. So that's why he's potentially in the gun this week. So besides that, no, I think let's move on, Blake. I could just talk about dribble for a while.
Go through every single player on the list. I think you've raised a good point there, though, regarding West Coast and Fremantle. You really don't know how their team's going to line up over the next 2-3 weeks. It's hit West Coast hard, obviously, over the last 2 rounds, but very similar to it could happen to Fremantle any round now. It would not surprise me if
it's not just the Perth teams. It's not just the Perth teams.
and I was going to say, it would not surprise me if Sydney or Geelong or any of the teams that rips through them at some stage throughout the year. That's why the AFL's got COVID procedures in place, so they've got these backup players on lists and everything. Unfortunately, it's just the way it's got to be, and just got to be prepared for anything. But you got to take extra precautions in holding on to those trades for as long as possible, I reckon.
Just one more thing for me. So, which is why the bench is important. So right now from the weekend, I still have Sam De Koning. I still have Elijah Hollins, and I had Nick Martin who didn't play, and Hugh Dixon. So there you go. Pretty much on each line I had a player who didn't play for COVID or I still have Elijah Hollins. So that's why I'm a bit behind in terms of cash. That's why I have so much money in the bank. So I have those 4 players cheap and not playing. So it's risky on my behalf, on anyone's behalf, to hold too many of those players, because whether it's COVID or injury, if you have too many donuts, I think it will backfire in a few weeks' time, or whenever it happens. There's going to be some superstar players who miss out with COVID, and then you need to have a solid bench option to at least have a good backup score. So that's why the priority should be number 1, is to get those cheap players who are going up in price and make sure you're avoiding a lot of those donuts, I reckon.
Yeah, especially if you've got them on the same line. For me, I had Baldwin and De Koning as my forward benches not play on the weekend.
Yeah.
I think De Koning will come back from his concussion. Mm-hmm. But Baldwin, I can't see him getting a game again anytime soon, to be honest. I think Nick Martin will come back into the Bombers side, but he didn't look good in round 1. Even though Essendon perform so badly, and that's a conversation for another time. But I can't see Baldwin getting a game anytime soon, so I'm definitely looking at getting him out. I also had Dixon and Hoff not play as well, so those West Coast players, I don't know if they'll get a game anytime soon as well after they didn't perform that well in round one, but they might need them as backup players. So you're happy to go through our trades now, Clinton? Our potential, what we're looking to do?
Sure. So at this stage, I'm really undecided, as you could probably tell. So
it is Monday night.
A lot will depend on if there's any laid outs with COVID. So there's no point really speculating too much. But a couple of ideas I've had so far is to potentially move on the likes of McGovern. The one player which you mentioned earlier who scored you 151 points.
Bowie.
David. I don't have him. And yeah, the brief part of the game that I saw, he definitely impressed me. And it's just whether or not I bring him in or not. So the two options I'm looking at is probably I'm likely bringing him in. And the other one is which premium or even mid-price I'd go to. So it's the likes of Heaney, Cripps, and Petrarca and Hall. Sorry, they're the four main names I'm looking at, and I'm likely bringing one. If I want to get really risky, as you mentioned, the likes of Whitfield, potentially I could. I'm not sure it's worth a trade boost to do something like that. So I'm likely to do that change. I think I'm likely to bring in Bowie and then probably one of those four players. I probably lean most towards still Petrarca because I think of those four names, I've got the most trust in to be a consistent high scorer for the entire season. So I think I said it a couple of weeks ago about Cripps. He's likely to start the season off really well. And I think there's every chance of him hitting a bit of a wall soon. I hope he does. He's obviously a gun player, but it could be costly if I don't get him. Heaney, we've mentioned. Hall, we've mentioned. But yeah, I think Petrarca is the one. So the players that potentially could go for me is McGovern and then maybe the likes of someone like Gibcus. Otherwise, as I said earlier, I probably should be keeping those players and getting rid of one of the rookies like Hollands or Dixon even. So that's what I'm tossing up in brief. A lot could happen between now and Thursday night. But yeah, 450K in the bank, that's the way I'm looking. So best bet, I'll try and keep you updated with when I make these moves, and then you can maybe tweet them out.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance last week as I was driving, but I'll get on the Twitter and post them out on our mini FSC Twitter there, Clinton. So you'll be making your trades as late as possible there with the rolling lockout, which is always great advice for our community. But with Bowie is playing pretty early on there, so we'll tweet that out once you make your trades. For me, players on the chopping block are Chapman for Fremantle, McGovern for Carlton, and then you've got your did not play over the weekend. So you got the Hoff, Dixon, and Baldwin. Like I said, I think Taconi will come back in, and having bench options is important. So I'll be holding on to him. So at this stage, I'll be doing McGovern to Hewitt because I think he's just scoring too well as that 399K defender. With a bit of forward backline movement, I'll be able to make that happen. And I just need that extra 20K, so I'll be going Baldwin to Martin at this stage.
Yeah, so you're not getting Hayes.
So that'll be my third one as my boost if Hayes is picked. I don't reckon Hayes will get picked.
Oh, big call. So even watching the game, he's still just he plays so well. But I understand the rider coming back in. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. That's going to be really telling for a lot of super coaches out there. You've been saying managers throughout this video, but I reckon, but it's
coaches.
Yeah,
I'm hoping Hayes gets dropped, to be honest.
Yeah,
it'd be a big differential for me.
It's going to be really important because if he does, it's going to be interesting. We'll see.
Yeah, so I could potentially just do one trade and go Chapman straight to Hewitt, and that would improve my average over the last 2 rounds by about 50 points. But he did score 80 in round 1, so I'm almost willing to give Chapman another chance. My early captaincy options, I am quite happy to lock in what I did last week at this stage and put the vice captain on Dunkley, who's got the first game off the mark against Sydney, and then captain Lachie Neale, who is playing against North Melbourne. I think pretty obvious choice. Last year, he scored 156 against North Melbourne. So, happy to go with that option again.
I'm likely to do the same as last week also. So, Jack Macrae into Miller, and I'm happy with those 2 premium mids. So, there's no going away from that from my end. Lachie Neale I have, and I'm really excited that obviously, hopefully scores well again, but they're my top 2, and maybe you still don't have Macrae Blake, and maybe it's his turn to score a 190. So we'll see. But how good's Miller? What a gun! And he still has scope, I think, to score bigger. He's an absolute machine. So there's my pump up for Miller this week.
Yeah, it could very well happen, and I'm again regretting that I went to Bontempelli after the first 2 rounds, but he could very well turn it around, Bontempelli, and score 3 goals and get 30 disposals. He's got the capabilities to do it. I'll just quickly run through our leaders of our Patreon, even though half of them probably watch anyway. Majority will be watching anyway, Clinton. So you got that Jim's Jack Jumpers on top, Lion King, you're in 3rd, Clinton. Hailstorm in 4th, Job Not Jabbed is 5th, Green Machine is in 6th, and I'm in 7th. So that's the top 7 out of our 17 Patreon league there, Clinton. Another question that came through the chats over the last couple of days when we sent out, if they've got any questions for the show, just quick fire questions for you, Clinton. Seinfeld or Friends?
It's not even a debate. It's Seinfeld by a long way. Friends is good for the occasional laugh, but Seinfeld's the greatest show ever. So it's not even a question to me.
Everybody Loves Raymond or Frasier?
The first one, and don't mind a bit of Raymond. That was a bit more small dose. That was more of an occasional watch. Seinfeld I could watch all day, every day, but still, Frasier not for me.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of Frasier, to be honest. It's a bit old for me, I think. Chris Rock or Will Smith?
Well, let's go with Will Smith. Yeah, there's a lot of mixed opinion about it all. But perhaps people are getting away with too much of what they say and there's no consequences. So, why not? I'm on the Will Smith bandwagon.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Will Smith as well. Chris Rock was due for a good slapping, I think.
So the question about Seinfeld came through from the Lion King himself. I think the other question was, what's an acceptable VC score? So last week I took the 142 from Macrae. So personally speaking, I think it depends how safe and risky you want to be, but my score this season, knowing it all depends how much trust you have in your secondary option. So for me, I've got a lot of trust in Miller. So it would need to be, as it stands, I think, I'd say 130. If Jack Macrae scores 125 this Thursday night, I'm going to back in Miller because see him consistently scoring that high level. Those types of players, like Jack Steele, like he was, for me, having a bit of a poor game last night, and he still scored, what was it, about 110?
111.
So those types of players, yeah, for me, it needs to be 130. So what's your opinion about that, Blake?
I agree. I think it all depends on how risky of an option your secondary captain option is. Generally speaking, in the past, I've always said 120 is my limit. If they score above 120, I'll lock them in as my captain, depending on how safe it is, and guaranteeing that I've got a looping option on the bench as well. If they're an emergency or something, I'll still stick with my secondary captain. But if Dunkley scores around that 120 to 130 mark this upcoming game, I'm still most likely locking Neil, just because of the amount of faith that I have him in to score over 130 coming into that game. So I think it all comes down to the confidence of the second player, more so what the first player even scores.
Yep. Well done. I've got one question I'll chuck in. You've asked about Raul. Jake Bowie.
Yep.
David Bowie. Is he a trap? Is he a trap? If you don't own him, is he a trap?
As a Bowie owner, I would say he's a trap. I wouldn't go out of my way to bring him in, to be honest. After round one, I was nearly ready to let him go. And with Melbourne's lineup the way it is, they were lacking a few defenders. Once all those players are back playing full strength team, I think he probably won't get the distribution that he had in the last game. The likes of Lever, they're good intercept players. Now we got a lot of these disposals off intercept possessions on the weekend, and once they're back full strength, I think he is a bit of a trap, to be honest. I wouldn't go out of my way to get him, but if you got the cash readily available there for him, I'd go for it. But I wouldn't be throwing everything at him, to be honest.
I like that answer, Blake. I think you might have just persuaded me to avoid him.
Persuaded you out of him, and now he'll come out and score 150.
Yeah, that's okay. Did you have any more questions?
No, that's me done. But just in saying that about Melbourne, they had Jake Lever and Michael Hewitt out of the side. That's all I've got to say.
Do we have any more shout-outs from last week who joined Patreon in the we also recorded our Supercoach video last week, Wednesday. This week we've done our switcheroo. Obviously, Supercoach tonight, which is a Monday night, and we'll do AFL Fantasy on Wednesday night. And I think we had a few more Patreon sign-ups.
Yeah, we had
since Wednesday.
We did. We had Max, Lewis, Zach, and Brent as well, I believe, since we last recorded Clinton. So thanks to those guys for joining our Patreon. If you
Louis, I think it was Louis, not Lewis, but carry on. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
If you are watching the show, feel free to check out our Patreon show our page if you're not a subscriber. We will be definitely continue doing the shout outs throughout the season, and just to support the show, and make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel or the podcast wherever you're watching or listening to the show this evening.
Excellent. Good luck with your decisions this week, Blake. This is when it's all becomes interesting, and we're either going to be up and about next week or having trade regret. But I look forward to it. The footy, the overall games, it's been really exciting. So I'm enjoying this season so far. Looking forward to this week.
Yeah, the footy's been good. Round two had the lowest attendance since 2003, but watching on TV, it's been really good. So, looking forward to round three of Supercoach. Excited to do the trades and have people go up in price and everything like that. So, good luck for round three, Clinton.
You too.